Alright, fine. I'll get Super Meat Boy's platinum. Super Meat Boy has a legacy in the trophy hunting community as an extremely hard platinum. Its guide on PSN Profiles has it listed as a 10 out of 10 difficulty, taking roughly 100 hours to complete. Many YouTubers have made videos on their trials and tribulations to get this platinum, saying how difficult the game is, how many times they almost gave up, and then finally, the euphoria of completing one of trophy hunting's hardest challenges. I knew it as one of the older platinums to have a widely agreed upon reputation as a difficult platinum. Does the vaunted difficulty live up to the hype? In early January, I had just finished Shadow of the Colossus and was working on Kingdom Come Deliverance, when I realized that that game is basically just Skyrim, but everything is more annoying, so I decided to move on. I wanted to hunt an ultra-rare platinum because I had been on a binge of easier games to end 2023, so I was searching through my collection and came across Super Meat Boy. I had considered this game before, but I always felt kind of wary of the 10 out of 10 difficulty and 100-hour commitment. But after my giant YouTube channel was bombarded with totally real haters saying I could never accomplish this, I decided to give it a go. For those who've never contemplated this trophy list, I'll break it down into two easy groups. Roughly half the trophies serve the I'm a Golden God trophy of getting 100% completion, i.e. all bandages, all characters, all Light World levels A+, and all Dark World levels completed, and all Warp Zones completed. The second section is the Deathless runs. Each world, other than the end, has a trophy for the Deathless run of its Light World, and a trophy for the Deathless run of its Dark World. This means completing all 20 levels in whatever given world without dying. This can be done in any order, and from what I saw, most people who make videos about this platinum generally hop around trying to get the hardest levels out of the way first. It's a very logical approach that totally sucks. Just kidding, but I'll explain in a bit. So the next day, I jumped in with both feet on stream and started playing through the game. Pretty much immediately, I gained a fair bit of confidence in my ability to complete the platinum, as it only took me about 15 hours total to complete the first half of the trophies, the Golden God trophy. This left just the Deathless runs. As a side note, streaming these games is always kind of funny. My stream isn't very large, but games like this tend to attract folks who want to see someone experience the pain they themselves felt on their first playthrough. I've experienced this in Trials Rising, Trackmania Turbo in 2020, basically any hard game with a dedicated community. Most people are chill and honestly really encouraging, and it's really nice to have them in. However, almost without fail, you'll have that one guy being like, "Oh, you haven't even done the hard stuff yet." And the funniest thing about this trope, I guess, is that they'll say it regardless of how far along you are. I had people saying this during my 100% completion playthrough. I had people saying it when I started the Deathless runs. I got to Cotton Alley, the final world in the game, and some dude was like, "This will take you forever. This is when it gets really hard." So was it? Were these folks right? Or were they desperately hoping for a hit of Schadenfreude that would never come? Well, I think now is a good time to talk about my method for the Deathless runs. I started watching guides trying to see if there were strategies out there that were better than the ones that I came up with, which there often were. And this is when I noticed that every guide, written or video, had the same suggestion. Play through the world, try to figure out a bespoke order in which to play the levels, organized from the ones you find hardest to the ones you find easiest. You'd see videos of people doing levels 19 and 20 of Cotton Alley Dark before jumping to 1, and then jumping to 9, and then doing 12 and 13, and then back to 5, etc. The idea being, once you get to the last levels, you want them to be easy because your nerves will probably cause you to choke. And like I said before, this is a completely logical theory, but I developed a different approach that I think also has a lot of merit, though it was largely born out of me being lazy. I didn't want to mess around on the map in between every level, and I also found that just doing runs 1 to 20 gave me a better feel for the levels themselves. I still did chop up worlds sometimes, but usually into the largest groups I thought I could get away with, like 17 to 20 in Hell Dark and then 1 to 16. This meant that I got a lot more attempts off, because I didn't have to back out to the map every time I died. I could just start my run from wherever. Another merit of this was that I got a lot more confident practice. If you're always playing a level in the later part of your run, you're probably not going to be as practiced at it, and probably opt for safer strategies so you don't choke. I embraced the choke, and I had multiple chokes on basically every Dark World. No! But what this meant was that I felt more comfortable on average on every stage, allowing me to put more runs together, increasing my confidence and helping me reach that feeling of it's only a matter of time now. And that feeling helps buoy me through difficult grinds. It changed the task from a crazy run that I have to fluke my way into to a run where I just have to get lucky once or twice. And for me, this makes a world of difference. I won't say I breezed through the Light Worlds up to Rapture, but I did use pretty much only Meat Boy for them, and they took me a total of 5.5 hours to complete. I didn't use other characters as much, as I feared I'd get too used to them and then set myself back on Cotton Alley, where you can only play as Bandage Girl, who's just Meat Boy. I left Cotton Alley's Light World for last, along with its Dark World. The Dark Worlds were obviously way more challenging, and I quickly started using the Kid wherever I could to make levels easier. But I also found that there are plenty of levels where that slow-ass character is just a hindrance. Generally, if I had to do a level quickly, especially if I had to travel upwards quickly, I want a Meat Boy, because his jump is higher and faster. If the level was slower but more precise, then the Kid's double jump is a complete game changer. I cruised through Forest and Hospital Dark World, and it only took me about 2.5 hours for those worlds. Salt Dark World was definitely the first time where I played through the world and doubted whether I could even do it. I was dying like 5 to 10 times on every level, just not feeling consistent anywhere. It ended up taking me just over 4 hours to complete. And I'm not telling you that to flex. It was an important realization. 4 hours seemed like a lot while I was playing, But looking back through the VOD, I remember feeling how impossible this was at first, and then within the same 4-hour period, it gradually went from I can't do this to it's only a matter of time. The inevitability threshold. And just as an aside, my order from this world ended up being level 12 to level 20 and then level 1 to 11. As in, I just started a run at 12 because I died there and rolled with it. I did the hardest levels in the middle and left a very chokeable level 11 to the end. This was a great confidence builder for me, and I took my newfound confidence into Helldark World, which only took another 3.5 hours. It felt easier than Salt Dark, which is a sentiment I've heard expressed among many Platinum holders, so maybe that's not surprising. Now, Rapture Dark was a different story. This is the only world I feel like I got it before I probably should have. It was only about 4.5 hours again. But again, I did the levels I struggled with the most in the middle of the run, and it's not like 8 is a slouch either. That's the advantage of getting to that point of it's only a matter of time. Sometimes that comes a little earlier than you think it would. This was another world where my first playthrough was a complete disaster, dying 10 plus times on most levels, that feeling of can I ever do this? But again, through repeated practice and a bit of luck, everything slowly felt more and more doable until we crossed the inevitability threshold. This feeling completely crystallized in Cotton Alley Light. Again, terrible first playthrough, felt pretty hopeless about it, but I chugged away and decided to just repeatedly play the world 1 to 20, no matter how many times I died. I wasn't even trying for a run at the time. It was more just getting a feel for the levels and the structure of the world organically. I think the failure of the more fragmented approach is that during a first playthrough, if you draw a line graph for each level's difficulty, that graph is going to look like I drew it after getting the platinum. It's going to be all over the place. But it doesn't stay like that. Sometimes levels that start off really difficult end up really easy as you find consistent strategies and workarounds that make them simple. Sometimes levels that start easy stay easy. When you practice one level at a time and you restart your run to the same level every time you die, you're falling out of practice with the other levels. When you play every level consistently, the line graph flattens, which is a nice visualization of consistency. So I realized after playing the world over several times, all of a sudden I was putting together strings of 3 or 4 deathless levels in a row with increasing regularity. There were sticking points, of course, but sometimes I'd just glide right through them with no problem. Sometimes I'd die on the easy stages and tilt myself off the face of the planet. But playing the levels over and over meant I never put any stress on any of them in particular, which kept the session feeling nice and breezy. This was also when I started ending my Meat Boy streams with an hour or two of Stardew Valley, which was a lovely escape. I tend to stress pretty heavily about tough grinds like Meat Boy. I'm like constantly visualizing stages and practicing them in my head even after I'm not streaming, fretting about dumb stuff like what if I never get it done? Like what if it's all been a fluke so far? So having a way to decompress and reset for the next day was really helpful for me. Cotton Alley Light took me the longest of any world by far, unsurprisingly. It's very tricky. It's a very tricky run to complete normally, let alone deathlessly. But after about 10 hours, I managed to clutch out a run, going from level 7 to 20 and then going 1 to 6. Yes! 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 Oh! I was thrilled to get this, and I took a few looks at the Dark World before noping out of there to play like 4 hours of Stardew that day. The next day, I saddled up and got prepared for the final challenge, Cotton Alley Dark. This is almost an exact carbon copy of my methodology for Cotton Alley Light, just repeatedly playing through the world sequentially over and over. I actually got to the point of inevitability pretty quickly, but the world was still challenging, so my consistency just needed to improve. I want to briefly talk about practicing confidently. This is more than just a mental exercise. I think confidence in skills is kind of a two-way street. Like I have to believe I can do something so that I have the fortitude to go out and try it, but I also have to be good enough that I give myself something to believe in. This sounds like a paradox, but it's more of a virtuous cycle, I think, and these things kind of reinforce each other. The perfect example of this is the ending of level 9, where I blast off of the wall, up and through the saws, and then all the way down to the other side and land right on Meat Boy's stupid face. Every video I've seen of this world being done, even the ones where they do level 9 very early in the attempt, aka all of them, the player will hug Meat Boy back onto the original wall so they don't fall off the map. I decided not to do this because A, I didn't think judging the fall would be that hard, and B, I wanted to feel like I was that good. I believed I could do it, so I practiced to make sure I could believe I could do it. Does that make sense? This world ended up going down in again about 10 hours, handing me the Super Meat Boy plat. As you can see from my reaction, clearly I had a lot of pent up nerves. But like I said earlier, I stress out a lot about challenges like this, which is something I'm working on. But part of the way I'm overcoming that is by taking everything as it comes. I worry that I won't ever be able to get something like this done, and for some reason that would be a big failure, and I hate failing. Thoughts like this will often lead me to not even attempting something out of fear of failure. I mentioned earlier in the video that I had considered this platinum a few times before. Every time I turned it down, it was because I didn't want to fail at it. But what helped me was reframing the challenge as something fun, something that I enjoy doing, that I can do. Not a question of if, but when. Most of what made this difficult wasn't the challenge itself, it was my reaction to failing. And changing my approach to allow me to focus on consistency and practice took the edge off chokes and bad deaths, and I had a lot of them. So was this platinum the worst experience of my life? A nightmare full of pain and misery and 22,000 deaths? Not even close. This took me about 60 hours and I did it with just over 9,200 deaths. This is my rarest platinum, but I don't even know if it's the most difficult. Either way, I honestly think that many more people could do this, and I encourage everybody to try and not be scared off by the game's legacy. After all, many folks who actually have this platinum generally go back and rate it as much easier in hindsight. Now, having said all that, I just want to take a moment to complain about how dumb this game's controls are. Like, they're so dumb. They're very frustrating. And I've heard many people say this game has tight controls, and I don't know what the fuck that means, but how does it make sense that when I stop pressing right in the air, Meat Boy loses 0 momentum? Does this game take place in a vacuum? Because it sucks! Also, why when I land with no directional input do I stop immediately, but when I hold the opposite direction, I slide a bit further in my original direction? Alright, I realize it's slightly churlish for a 31-year-old man with 0 programming experience to complain about a 15-year-old game for edgy tweens, so I apologize for that. I just had to get it out of my system. The game's fun enough, and it's a really great platinum to have in the old cabinet, especially now that I've crested 200 platinums. I can't wait to earn more this year, and I hope to make more videos about them. And if you folks want to be around for sweet moments like this, feel free to stop by my Twitch channel, linked in the description. I trophy hunt live every day except Sundays. Thank you very much for watching.